Hey sis, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt alone? Maybe anxious, or maybe like you just wish you could find a good group of women who loved the Lord. Do you want a safe place to talk about all of the real life challenges, life as a working mom, stay-at-home mom, entrepreneur, or simply just raising your kids in today's world? Do you want to grow deeper in your marriage, to find out your true identity and whose you truly are, to know your calling, your purpose, and overall grow intentionally with Jesus? Then this podcast is for you. Welcome to Gather the Gals, a podcast and ministry created for you, the everyday woman and mom, for all of my gals who want to know their voice matters, their story matters, who want to have a place to feel loved, supported, and encouraged, to find joy in Jesus and not this world, to leave the lies of the enemy behind. Then welcome. Our motto around here is we keep it raw and real, girl, knowing that we have been redeemed. We aren't perfect, but we have a Savior who is. And you, my sweet, sweet friend, are welcome to come as you are. Now let's chat on all the things. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Gather the Gals. I'm your host, Lincoln, and today, y'all, I have an absolutely amazing, incredible, very special guest with me today. I've never met her, y'all, but I can already tell you, y'all are going to absolutely love her. I already love her. This is our first time chatting in person. Well, not in person, I guess, remotely, but seeing her lovely face. Her name is Latoya Mathews, and y'all, I am not even kidding you when I say that the Lord completely orchestrated this conversation. Super short, quick backstory. I was on the way to take my oldest to kindergarten one day, and I was in the car. It was early, and I just felt like we needed to have a conversation about abortion. And y'all know that I love to bring on people and share their heart and their testimony, that I truly believe that God has given us these stories that we'll share. And when we share, we help our sisters out. And there's just not a lot on that topic that people are wanting to talk about or be open about. And there's a lot of aggression about it. There's a lot of controversy about it. And I simply prayed, Jesus, bring somebody to me that has gone through this, that would like to speak through it or something. And it was almost a prayer that I'm like, this feels impossible. I was to the point where I wanted to just get on Facebook and be like, hey, if you have had this, if you know somebody, please reach out. I would love to host you on the show. I literally prayed that prayer. By the time I took my kid to school and back home, I had a message in my inbox, and it literally was like, hey, I am just wanting to reach out to you. Here's my story. And it was literally all I saw was abortion. And I was like, oh my gosh, Lord, you are so good. I immediately just started crying, y'all. I'm not even kidding you. I was full of tears. I didn't even tell anybody that this happened. I got on my Instagram and I searched her name, and I was like, oh, I hope I can find you, and I hope this is the right. And I was just it's on her social media, y'all. So I sure did. I sent her a voice text, and I'm like, I'm in tears. I just prayed this prayer 20 minutes ago, and here you are. It is just amazing to me how God works. And so I am just so, so happy to have you on the show, Latoya. I cannot wait to just hear your heart. So please take it away. Tell us about yourself, your story, your testimony, anything that you want to share that may just help another sister out.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad, Lincoln. The Lord really orchestrated, because I kid you not, I was on Apple Podcasts looking for podcasts that I could email and reach out to share my story, especially Christian believers, faith-based podcasts that I could reach out to, that I would be able to share my story with. And I came across yours, and I was like, well, let me go to the website and see, if it aligns. And when I saw, that you were a mother, I was like, I'm going to email, because I have a 17-year-old daughter, and life after abortion with having a child, was extremely hard. So I reached out, and when you responded, I was like, oh my God, it's meant to be because I was praying. I said, Lord, lead me to the podcast that I need to reach out to. So it is definitely God ordained, and it is an honor to be here and to finally meet you face to face. And so, as Lincoln mentioned, my name is Latoya Mathews. On my Instagram is the Latoya Mathews, and I'm originally from Mississippi, born and raised a country girl at heart. But now I live in Georgia. I just celebrated in November. I celebrated 18 years of marriage. So I've been with my husband 18 years, and he was actually the one that took me to the abortion appointment. And so to be together, still together, most people say that we're, one in a million, like we're a miracle couple, because most people don't survive that, or a relationship doesn't normally survive something like that. So we've been together for going on 22 years and
Wow,
married for
that's incredible.
18. And, we live in Georgia. And so it's just been amazing. I love being in Georgia. I'm a Georgia peach now. And so everything started back in 2003 at the age of 18 when I had the abortion. And you will catch me pausing because I'm working on my language instead of saying my abortion, saying the abortion, because it's not something that I have to take ownership of. It's an experience that has happened in my life. I'm embracing the language of, being God's daughter, and understanding that this did not define who I am. It's just a part of the experience in my life and the testimony that I get to share. So if you hear me pause, just know I'm shifting the language of how I
That is
speak
so good.
about it.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I love that. I mean, good for you. Like,
Yeah.
that is just right there, y'all. Write that down. Notes. Get your journals out. That is so good, because so many people just struggles and trials in their life. They feel like it defines them. And it's like, no, like, God is still with you, and he's in it. And this happened, and now it's going to be used, he's going to make a way. Oh, okay. Keep going. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, so at 18, I walked into a health department in Mississippi. It's called a health department. And I walked in because my cousin had been making fun of me, and she's like, "You've been sleeping a lot," like just naive to the whole situation. And I went into that clinic, and I heard three words that really shook me. "You are pregnant." And I was like, this cannot be. And of course, in my mind now, like, definitely it could be. You participated in this. And so I'm like, I'm listening to her, but then I'm not listening to her. It just sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher when she's talking, womp, womp, womp. That's all I heard. And so I'm like, I cannot keep this baby. Like, I had been presented with a scholarship to play basketball and to play tennis. And at that time, it was necessary for me. I told myself it was necessary for me to have this, because the information that I had was that this having a kid would keep me in Mississippi. Like, it would keep me from pursuing the things that I wanted to do, not understanding that if I would have had other information, the outcome would have probably been different. But the decision was made based on the information that I had. And so I told myself, I can't do this. I already don't have a relationship with my mother. I refuse to be on welfare. And no offense to anyone who's on welfare. That was just the mindset of an 18-year-old who is, fight or flight. Like, what are we about to do right now? And I remember walking into that clinic, and I was holding my head down, taking that walk of shame, hoping that nobody saw me. Nobody knew me, but I didn't want anyone, to see me. And so I walked in that clinic, and I didn't even look around. I didn't look around to see the women's faces. I just remember filling out that paperwork. And even before then, I talk about this in my book, Unveil Freedom. One of the things I remember doing was, when I found out that I was pregnant, I remember standing in the yard under this big, big tree, and I began to punch myself in my stomach, thinking that I could make myself lose this baby. Like, in my mind, it was, what if you could just punch hard enough? And, sometimes we have to be careful with the thoughts that we have towards people when it comes to things like this, because, you never know what you would do when you're in a situation like that. And again, I'm a teen. I don't know. My mind is not comprehending what is happening, but I just remember punching myself and just thinking that if I could just do it hard enough, this would be the outcome. But that didn't happen. And so I went to the clinic and
Hey guys, if you are liking this episode right now, would you do me a huge favor? Would you go and subscribe to our channel, leave us a quick 5-star review, and if you want to leave a sweet note, we love that too. And please just share this with another mom who needs a little bit of encouragement. We are so thankful for all of your love and support here at Gather the Gals.
Filling out the paperwork, and again, trigger warning to anyone who has ever had an abortion. I would encourage you to stop right here if you don't want to go any further, because it can be triggering, if you haven't had the healing. And they took me to the back, and I remember laying on the table, and I didn't know they had pills. So mine was the suction, the vacuum. And I just remember hearing the vacuum and life being sucked out of me as I laid on that table, and I closed my eyes. And I remember opening my eyes and just seeing the jars on the shelves and just thinking, my baby's about to be in that jar. And I remember going to the recovery room, and it seemed like forever being in the recovery room, but I know that it was only a short period of time. And after that, I got in the truck with my boyfriend and we went school shopping. We didn't say anything to each other. It was very awkward and silent. And we went school shopping because I was getting ready to go to college. But when I got back to my aunt's house, I remember going to the back room, sitting on that queen bed, and just bursting into tears and said, Lord, what did I just do? And my boyfriend at the time must have been feeling the weight as well, because he came back to pick me up, and we got in the truck and we rode to this isolated place, and I just got in his lap and I just sobbed. I just started crying because I'm like, I couldn't forgive myself. And so every day for those 10 years, that's like 5 million minutes. I did the math. How many minutes is it for 10 years? It's like 5 million minutes that I would pray every day and say, Lord, forgive me for what I had done. That was my only prayer. That was the only thing that I knew to pray. And in 2006, I graduated from college and I moved to Georgia. And it wasn't until I started writing my book, that I remembered I had just gotten baptized and in May, and I had the abortion in July. I had just gotten baptized, and I'm pretty sure that's where the weight of all of that also came from, but I didn't know that at the time. But I moved to Georgia in May of 2006. And when I moved, the first thing my grandmother said was, now don't go to Georgia and get pregnant. And what happened? I moved to Georgia and I got pregnant. Happy birthday to my husband, because that's when it happened. Happy birthday to him. But I knew that I wasn't going through that torment and that hell any longer. Like, I had to put my big girl undies on and say, you know what? We're going to have this baby, because I refuse to go through that again. And so and actually my husband told me that I was pregnant at the time. So took 2 pregnancy tests later, and here we are. And I was at work, and my friend, I was in the back in the break room talking to my friend, and I broke down crying to her. And I said, how can I take care of one when I've given up another? Because at that time, it was like, I don't even know why I'm crying.
No, you're good. You're This is so good and it's so needed. I mean, my gosh, you're so brave. And I know like this conversation is going to help and heal so many women who they have this pain. Like you said, you prayed every single day for so many years. You did the math, and that was the only prayer that you could probably utter.
Yeah.
And you probably felt that overwhelming guilt. And when you finally let that go and gave it to Jesus and realized this is not my guilt to carry alone, you know, that he can use this tragedy or this guilt or this whatever that you felt in that moment for his goodness and his glory, and to help so many different women and people going through this. And that is, to God be the glory, right? Because there is there's so many women out there who they don't know where to turn, and they whether they have the abortion or they don't, they are just stuck in this cycle of, why did I do this? Can I ever be different or be forgiven, or God won't ever love me enough, you know? And it's like, if they could just see that, you know, God uses every situation, and there is nothing too much or too far or you're not too far gone. There's nothing that can separate you from his love. And that is the message that you are giving, is just a hope for women who have gone through this, of God's love, not this world's love. They may not ever be able to fully forgive themselves or to grasp anything, but if they can find that glimpse of hope and love found in only in Jesus and not this world, then that is enough, you know?
Because at that time, I didn't feel worthy to be a mom. Like, based on that decision, I didn't feel worthy. And so many women, like you said, are also feeling that weight of not being worthy, or they associate, well, maybe this is God's punishment to me, why I can't conceive because of that decision that I made. But it's all lies, you know, from the enemy. And I realized that. And even at the time after I had my daughter, when I finally gave birth to her, I brought her home. And my husband was in Mississippi visiting our son, because I have a bonus son who lives in Mississippi. And my husband was visiting him. And every time I would pick up my daughter, she would start crying. But when my mom picked her up, she would stop crying. But in my mind, I didn't know that and I didn't have that information that babies can feel the stress from, you know, their mom. I didn't know that. I ran out to my car in the heat of June in Georgia. And if you know Georgia, it gets hot. It's called Hotlanta for a reason. I ran out to the car and I called my husband crying, and I said, "She doesn't love me." And he's like confused. He's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "Our daughter, she doesn't love me." I said, "Every time I pick her up, she starts to cry. But when my mom picks her up, she stops crying." And I was like, this, and the lies that the enemy told me was, "See, I told you that she wouldn't love you because of what you've done." And it was just a lot of torment. And I was going to church. I was doing the things. I was still showing up in the church. And it was just like, life had been sucked out of me physically, but also spiritually, life was being sucked out of me as well. And I remember showing up to church one day, and my pastor looked at me and she said, "I see death in your eyes." And I knew that she wasn't lying. I was ready to give up on life. I was ready to leave behind my daughter as well as my husband, because that's how much torment that I was going through with having that. And also I had been doing other things. And I feel led to share this as well. I had been sexually, I had been intimate with the opposite sex. So all of these things were weighing down and tormenting me, and I was just going through pure hell. And so when she said that, I knew that it was God also saying, "You shall live and not die." Like, I'm not going to let this take you out. Like, I'm sending someone to see you. And so I went through that. And then my pastor introduced us to this book called The True Measure of a Woman by Lisa Bevere. And in that book, in chapter 2, it talked about cleaning out closets. And I knew that it was the Lord saying, it's time to clean abortion out of your closet. And it was also me having to deal with the death of my grandmother, the same grandmother that told me don't get pregnant when you go to Georgia. She was my rock, and she had passed away the same year I found out that I had gotten pregnant. So I knew at the time, I know now, at the time I was dealing with depression. I was dealing with the abortion. I was dealing with all of these things. But at that moment, again, it was like God was like, I'm seeing you. I need you to deal with this because there's work, for you to do. And so the first question was, what is it that you have in your closet that you need to clean out? I knew that it was abortion and dealing with the death of my grandmother. And then the second question was, what is it that you have to offer to other women? And I started to cry. And I got mad at God because I said, why would you make me with no purpose? I don't have anything to give to anyone. I don't have any value. So why am I even here? And we met back up. Thank God it was a small group of women because I was not ready to share that in front of everyone. And so I got back to the group and I shared. And I told my pastor that I had prayed every day for the past 10, 12 years for God to forgive me. And the very first thing that she said was, sweetie, God forgave you the very first time that you prayed. And she didn't know that when she said that, I had this pain in my stomach almost as a reminder to remind me of the decision that I made. And when she said that, I haven't had that pain in my stomach anymore because I knew now that it was me holding on to that unforgiveness against myself. And she didn't know that God had sent her as an angel in the flesh to say, Latoya, I'm giving you a gift. And so many times we have gifts that God has given us, but we choose to leave them unopened. And I needed to open that gift that day. And not only to open it, but receive what was on the inside. Because, when you get a bad gift, you don't receive it. You just place it back in the box underneath the tree or wherever you give it. But God has given us a good gift. And I chose to receive the gift and accept the gift into my life. And it took some work, to get there. But I'm thankful that I received it. And then in 2018, God began to speak and say, it's time to tell your story. And I was like, Moses, find somebody else to do it. I'm not doing that. I am not doing that.
Yep. Oh, man.
I'm not doing that. And
yeah.
I told the story in the midst of like 200-300 women at a business conference at that. And I said, how do you incorporate something so taboo into business? And I told the story. And after I spoke it, I ran out and I cried in the lobby. But it was also confirmation from the Lord because so many women came up to me after and was like, thank you for sharing your story. Like, I too have had one. And this young lady asked me to pray with her. And she said, I don't believe that I can have children because of that decision, because of that abortion. And so it was just like, God was like, this is why I need you to tell your story. And one thing that I just want to remind someone, and I don't even take this lightly, but Psalms 139 says that, he knows, like he knew I was going to walk into that clinic because he gave me free will. But the thought that he still choose to use me despite of that decision. And I'm thankful and grateful for God's grace and his mercy because based on Old Testament, I would have been stoned for that decision. I would have been put to death. But I thank God for his grace and his mercy that he sent Jesus, on the cross to die for the sin. So I no longer have to carry that shame. And me carrying that shame, would say that the cross was done in vain. But I don't have to carry that any longer. And no longer do I have to show up from the place of my wounds. Now I can show up from the truth and wisdom of my scars to know that I've been healed. I've been forgiven. I'm still chosen despite that because I am the daughter of the Most High. And so just having to unlearn some things and put lies to, counsel lies that the enemy speaks over me. And that's why I battled with so long for accepting the assignment, because it's like, Lord, this is not something that's sexy. This isn't a popular thing. Like, why do I have to be the one to tell this and show up to talk about it? And I'm reminded of each and every person that comes and says, thank you. Like, I've looked at YouTube videos, but I can see that they're still dealing with the shame and the regret and the guilt of this. But when I see you, I see freedom, I see joy, and that's what I want.
Oh, it's so good. And man, I don't even know where to start. Oh my gosh. It's so good. It's so good that you are so open, and that you have literally, like you said, you have taken this and surrendered it to God, and given everything back to him, because it's like you said, you didn't want this. You
Mm-mm.
didn't hope for that. You would be like, okay, now's your time to go speak and share it all. And you're like, no, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want people to think differently of me, to judge me, to do all this stuff. But it's like, God, if I can use my story and help one sister out, then that's enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is like you said, like, you said that you felt like you didn't have a purpose or a story or anything like that. But it's like, that is the thing that I am so passionate about, of bringing people on to share on this podcast, is because I do believe that we all have stories and purposes. And it's just, sometimes we're scared to step into that purpose, or we're scared to share our story because we are afraid of what people will say, or people that are mean.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we just got so comfortable and we're like, listen, I don't care what the outside world thinks of me, but all I care about is what Jesus says to be true, and live for that mentality and keeping your eyes on him.
Yeah.
And in doing so, it's like you said, it's like, there's so many people who want the good stories or the good testimonies or things like that. But it's like, you have no idea what your story, simple or small, huge, big, whatever, it's going to help somebody out. And it's not your job to save them. It's your job to share Jesus and to live like Jesus, right? And he's going to do the rest. It's to plant the seed and to understand, like, people have put so many rules and labels in Christianity. And it's like, God, he did not want that, right? Like, he called us to do, there's things that we need to do to be holy and to serve and to use our gifts and do these things. But he called us to love, right? Like, above all, to love. And my gosh, like, Jesus loved everybody, right? Like, he came to serve others, not to be served. And I think in our world, we hold our own selves up on a pedestal, and we're like, give me more money, give me more fame, give me more followers, give me all this. And then we're like, why am I still so empty? Why do I still want more? But it's like, man, if we just took it a step back and was like, Jesus, you are the source of all hope and all peace and all love. And you gave me this story. And it may make me look bad, but my gosh, if it is going to make me, like you said, feel joy again, feel hope and love again, and to just connect with somebody on a better level than this surface level friendship that our culture is so, like, everything is just so surface level. It's like, you don't ask the hard questions anymore, and that is what Jesus wants. And like, that is, one of the reasons that I started this, is because I would go to Bible studies in my church or with friends or whatever. And it's like, no, we left not knowing a single person's name. We didn't get to share what was on our heart or our prayer requests or things. And it's like, no, sister, like, I want you to come together with me in my living room and be like, okay, what is on your heart? Like, like you said, let's clean out the closets, right? Like, that is what is gonna let you get surrendered. Because until you do that, that 1 or 2% that you're holding on to, that you haven't told anybody about, the enemy has power over you. And until you surrender that and let that go, you're like, I've told everybody my things. Like, you want to think bad of me? That's fine. Like, I only care what Jesus says, right? Like, it's fine. Move on, find new friends.
I said, if you want me to tell this story, then you're going to have to cover me. I said, because you said that you will not put your people to shame. And if I'm yours,
Yes.
then when I tell this story, you will not put me to shame. And I had to
Yep.
do just like what happened with the 2 fish, 5 loaves,
Uh-huh.
2 fish.
Yes.
Yes, I
Girl.
had to do exactly what Jesus did. I took my
Yeah.
story and I said, Lord, here's my story. Bless it,
Yeah.
break it,
Yeah.
bless it. And I, give it, to him, just like you said.
Mm.
And I have to remember that I'm like, I know where I stand. When I
Yeah.
meet with women, I'm pro you. What does your soul
Yeah.
need? What does your
Yes.
soul need? Because people are showing up in what's supposed to be safe places and being condemned to hell. I don't need you to
Yep.
put me in hell. I've already put myself there.
Yes.
I need compassion. I need love. I
Right.
need,
Yeah.
the things that where I can take the steps and then I can walk and get that revelation of what it means when God says, don't shed innocent blood. Like, help me to
Yeah.
get to that place. So I'm just learning how to really embrace what God's word, says, because I know I've struggled in relationships. I've struggled with certain
Yeah.
things because of the abortion, the
Yeah.
lies that says you have to do this or overcompensate, overextend yourself so that people won't know about what you've done. But the most powerful thing that I found is sharing this truth, because every time I share, the chains of the enemy, the chains of shame, guilt, and regret are broken, because
Yes.
shame only grows when you're silent, but you
Yeah.
find strength in overcoming shame when you speak. And we have to get
Yes.
the safe places to where we can speak about it. And
Yeah.
I put in my book that shame is the acronym for silent, hurtful, and misleading emotions, because
Mm.
that's what it is. It misleads you, having you to think that if I don't say this, then I'm good, or no one would understand, like people would judge me. But the thing about shame is shame creates secrets, secrets create stress, and stress creates sickness. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
things that we're dealing with in our bodies are because we're holding on to that toxic thing of shame. And
Yeah.
we have to go back and remember, just like what happened in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve, it said that when their eyes were open, they were ashamed and covered themselves in fig leaves. And God came walking through and saying, calling them out. And he was like, well, how did you know you were naked? And we have to
Yeah.
get back to that place of being unashamed and
Yeah.
embracing the nakedness of our truths, embracing the nakedness of these stories, the real and the raw of it. Because right now, what we're doing is covering ourselves with those fig leaves. And those fig leaves could be, um, they could be the marriage. It could be the accolades, the accomplishments, the false things that cover you so that no one will know what you did.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I completely agree with you. And in the shame of that, like you said, it weighs on you so heavily that it starts to create sickness and all this other stuff in your body. And then you dump it out on other people too,
Mm-hmm.
right? And another thing too, you mentioned this a while back, but you said like you were in your group. And that's another thing about being in a group, like you said, a safe place where you can share everything, because oftentimes we learn more about ourselves when we are in a good, godly Christian community group, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that is what brings out different characters, different qualities, our story, our purpose, things like that, that we may be either scared to share. We may not know we're good at, or
Yeah.
things like that. But if you do find yourself, for anybody listening out there, in a group that you aren't comfortable sharing, you may have felt judged or things like that, it's maybe time to find a different group, because I have been there. There have been toxic relationships and things like that, in my life or whatever, that I have had to separate myself from. And it's all about finding the people who have truly just surrendered everything to God and said, God, like, you obviously, he knows everything about you, in your heart, in your story, in your life, everything you've done. So if when you finally understand, like, okay, God's already, he sees me, he knows my heart. Let me just go ahead and just brain dump on everything and just tell him everything exactly how I'm feeling. Like you said, you were mad at God.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. He can handle that, right?
Yeah.
That is something that I've heard from girls and women and think it's like I'm scared to talk to him because I've done this, or I'm scared that he's mad at me, or maybe like you said, I am mad at him. There's been times where I've been frustrated, or I'll straight up be like, God, I don't understand this. This makes me mad, right? And he knows that, right? Like he can handle that. He can handle the hard questions. And so just don't be afraid to just be open and talk to God and just let him know how you're feeling, what is on your heart, what is on your mind, and just say, like, God, like, where do you want me to use my story, right? Like it's so needed to not only help yourself get free and break those chains, but to help others. And like that is that is what he wants us to do with the gifts and the stories, is to help others. And you know, I love this community. It's like I tell people, I have been a pediatric nurse for 10 years. Like I have never saw this in my bingo card, like at all. Like I was like, you know, speaking, podcasting, like absolutely not. Right. And the Lord had put it on my heart for quite a bit of time. And I was just like, no, absolutely not. And finally, after having my daughter, I was like, okay, I think now's the time to do it. And it kind of just happened. And it's been so good, so fun. It's gotten me out of my comfort zone. It's helped me to open up and to share. And yeah, there's been times where I'm like, I'm done. I'm closing the laptop, and it's my husband, my biggest cheerleader, love him to death. He's like, nope, you're opening it back up. You're going to keep going, you know? And it's like the next day, it's like, I have an email or I have a DM or something. And they're like, that episode, thank you for that episode. Or, you know, it's like those little things that God, he keeps saying, keep going. Like, it doesn't matter like who's watching you, how many people are following you, or how many people you're helping. Like, keep going, because there may be somebody down the road who needs your heart or your message or your bravery to stand up. Like, your story may save somebody's life. Like, that is the thing that I heard this a while back, that you may get to heaven one day and you may be like, somebody may come up and be like, I'm here because of you. And you had no idea.
No
you know?
idea. Mommy. No idea.
It's just, it's so good. Your whole story, your heart. I mean, my gosh, like,
amen. And the other thing too is, I encourage people, if you've had one, tell your children. I told my daughter at 12, when she was 12, and you know, I know we like to protect our children, but they're getting more in the schools. They're getting more in school than, you know, they are. And I told my daughter what I had done. And her response was, well, thank you for choosing me. Like, you never know what it, you know, and it was like more water to my weary soul that I didn't think that I needed to hear. And even talking to my husband, he asked me one day, and it just took me in a full-blown hyperventilating, balled up like a baby. And he said, have you ever thought that one day when you get to heaven, there's going to be this kid that runs to you and say, hey, mommy? And it just took me into this place. And I just started crying. I said, because I never thought about that. When I asked God for forgiveness and repented and, you know, did the things that I needed to do, I'm like, that never even crossed my mind that I would encounter this child in heaven. And even writing my book, I had to grieve some things. I grieved the thought of not knowing the sex of my baby. I grieved not, you know, knowing some of these things. But on the other side, I'm grateful for some of the things. Like, I'm grateful that I didn't have the nightmares. I'm grateful that I didn't have those times where I couldn't stand the sound of a baby crying. I'm grateful because there are women who have literally lost their minds and died from things like this. And so to be here to tell this testimony and to share God's story that he is still writing is a testament in itself, because there were times when I thought that I was going to lose my mind, but God kept his promise when he said, you shall live and not die. He kept his promise when he said that you are forgiven. And even when you're forgiven, you're still chosen. He kept his promise to say you are still an heir. You still have the promises of God. Even when you thought abortion had aborted the promises are still yes and amen. Like, these promises still belong to you. Abortion isn't the author of the story. God is still the author. He's still writing it. And this is just a chapter in my book. And so, to the woman who thinks that abortion has caused you to lose some things, that is just a lie of the devil, because the Bible says that God can redeem the time. Whatever you thought you lost, God can redeem it. Whatever you thought you missed out on, God can redeem it. And the promises are still yes and amen. You still have purpose. You still have a destiny. You still have an assignment and call on your life.
Yeah, you do. And it's so easy to get wrapped up in the worldly views of everything, and to pick fights and to judge and to do all this stuff. But it's like, if you can just keep your eyes on Jesus in that absolute hurt where you are laying on your back and you have no idea which way to go or who to turn to or whatever, if you don't have anybody in your life that you can turn to, I hope you know that the creator of the universe is right there, and he is waiting for you, sister,
Yes.
to just come to him and to give it to him every single day. If you can just pick your feet up and get out of bed and continue just saying Jesus, that's all you have to say. Like, he knows, right? Like, he knows your heart. He's going to walk with you through it. He's going to get you through it. He's going to bring people in your life that are going to help you walk through it.
Yes. And I always say, even if you didn't have a physical abortion, you've had things in your life that have tried to abort your destiny, whether it be addiction, the eating disorder, the divorce, the, whatever, drugs, alcohol, whatever the case may be. You may not have a physical one, but you've had things in your life that have tried to abort you from getting where God wanted you to be.
Yes. Every thing in your life that is leading you away from Jesus, get it out of your life, because like you said, there are so many things, especially in today's world with the internet in our fingertips 24/7, that is trying to derail you and knock you off of the path that God has placed on your life. And that is the enemy, y'all. And he is going to do whatever he can to keep you away from Jesus, to keep you in a relationship and growing with Jesus. And he will use this guilt and this shame to continue to play tricks in your mind and to get you in your mind and keep saying that I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not chosen, why me, why not her, why this? And you play this comparison game that it's just awful, right? And when you are when you're just like, okay, this is my story, I'm gonna own it, I'm gonna let God use it, and you just keep going day after day after day, you are gonna find that joy again. And it's gonna only be found in Jesus, right? Like, this world is gonna continue to leave you empty, but there is such a hope and a promise in Jesus. And it's not in all of these, like I said a while back, these rules and these, lies and these stigmas and things like that people try to place on it. We are called to serve others, right? Like, we're called to love others. We're not called to judge and to pick and to debate and to do all this stuff. It's like, gosh, if we could just love each other more.
Yeah.
That's all. Like, we're called to be like Jesus, right? And if you are walking in the light of Jesus and trying to live your best for him and to love people, it shouldn't matter what they're doing in their life. Their story, it shouldn't matter, right? Like, you just focus on keeping your eyes on Jesus and not this world that changes every single day. Like, he's the same today and forever. And it's so good that we have hope in him every day, and that his mercies are new, every day. And it's freeing, it's freeing that we don't have to just feel so, like you said, guilty and ashamed of our past, right? Like that we can just place those bags at his feet and just say, God, you've already covered this. Like you already know, you've already written my story, my book, my chapter. Like that's last chapter. Like now we're on today's chapter, and then there's going to be more to come, right? Like if I woke up and I'm still breathing, like you put that air in my lungs, you gave me today. Like what is it today that I can use for your glory, use to bless you? And that could be as simple as you getting up and getting through another day, sister. Like it doesn't have to be big, right? But that's still enough. Like you making the choice to keep going and keep fighting, that's enough.
Yes, yes. And I'm always just reminded, of the scripture in Galatians where it says Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law. And when that revelation, I worked in banking for 18 years. And to redeem means to buy back. It means that there was a debit that took place from our sinful account and placed as a credit unto Christ. So when something is debited from your account, it no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the creditor that it went to. And so what happened through the law and what took place is that when I had that abortion, the consequences that came with that, it no longer was mine, because when I gave my life to Christ, God debited that. It was debited from me and credited unto the account of Christ. So when I got that revelation and understanding to know God has redeemed me, Christ has redeemed me, that no longer belongs to me. I no longer have to accept that in my account. I can put it in the check register to say it's been debited. It no longer belongs to me.
Yeah.
He bought me back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is so, like, he wants you, right?
All of me.
All of you. Like, he doesn't care about anything in your past that you have ever done. So whoever is listening out there who is like, but not my past, like not me, like I've done too much, I've been through too much, there is no way. No, like you are on this, listening to this podcast for a reason. Yes. And that glimmer of hope that you have, I want you to cling to it. And I want you to know that there is no other love like Jesus. Like he has already paid for it all. Like there is nothing that can separate you. You are not too far gone. You are chosen. You do have a purpose. Your story has a purpose and has meaning. And you have the choice right now to take that and to run with it, or to continue in this awful feeling of guilt and shame that the enemy has a hold on you. But you can also lay it down today and give it to Jesus and pick it up every morning and just say, God, I'm putting one foot in front of the other, and I'm going to keep saying your name. That's all I have to say. Like, you know my heart and you know where I'm going. And that is where I'm putting my trust and hope in today, is you. And that's it. You don't have to know what tomorrow holds or anything, right? Like he does. That's the beauty. He does.
And that's the thing, that you have to be willing and give yourself permission to lay it down.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's no past that can't be redeemed, and the greatest example of that is Paul. When God took him from being Saul to Paul, I mean, he was persecuting Christians. What else? That is unforgivable in the sight of man. That is unforgivable. But God still took him. God still took him and used him to go get a people that people would say they don't deserve it. But he went to the Gentiles and said, this is for you also. Right? Because that is the thing. So many of us are looking at ourselves as Gentiles, those that aren't worthy or, gracious enough to receive the word of God. But it's for the Jews and the Gentiles. The Bible says there's no difference between the two. Like the word is the word. It's for everybody who would receive it. And so it's just, when you think about the goodness of God and you think about where you would have been or could have been, and Christ came and pulled you out of the pit, like it just does something to you when you realize, and it's like you want to just show up, and it makes you realize I really don't have a lot of time here. So let me operate and do what I'm supposed to be doing, because the thing is, we're called to serve one another in love. Like we have to serve. And so I want to, not just when I get to the gates of heaven, but when I lay my head down at night, I want to hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. At the end of the day, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah, it's so good. That's all that matters, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I have such a kind of like a story in general of just like how I used to just want to keep going and do nursing stuff and keep getting, nurse practitioner, doctorate, and really just chasing degrees and money and things like that. And it's like you said, it's like we don't have a lot of time here. Like Jesus is coming soon for us. And there's so many people who just still need him, And that it's just been my heart. It's just loving others, ministry, letting people share their heart, share their story to help another,
Yeah.
And it's like when we do that, when we share our struggles, it's like Jesus is in the room, right? Like he's with us in it, and
Mm-hmm.
he is moving in that, and he is opening up doors and breaking chains within all of our hearts, and it's good for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I love that, just to be open and vulnerable and share your heart with others. Can you tell us more about your book, where people can find you, all of that good stuff?
Yes. So I wrote a book. It's called Unveiled Freedom: My Journey
Oh,
to Removing the Burden of Shame After Abortion. And I just literally, it's real, it's raw. I talk
yeah.
about how abortion affected my intimacy with my husband. Like, imagine trying to give your body to someone you love when you don't even love your body. That's hard. And so I talk about, it's very transparent, because I want people to understand that it is Christ. It is Christ, the one who has really set me free, and to know that there's no shame. Like, you're not the only one out, that's dealing with this. There's so many others. And so God has just really put this, for me to put out there. And it's just been a testimony to even have people who haven't had abortions to come back and say, your book has helped reveal where I've been operating in shame, like where I've been, some things that I've dealt with, or even like just knowing that they took others to have an abortion, and so I'm just so blessed to have, written this, and I'm just excited about it. And it can be found on Amazon, as well as my website, latoyamatthews.com. And you can find me on Instagram as well as Facebook and TikTok at the Latoya Mathews, and that's 1T in Matthews. And that's where I'm sharing all things. This year I really stepped into really owning my voice in this area of where God has called me to speak in. And so just understanding that it's not religious and it's not political. It is literally just being the feet of Jesus, the hands and feet of Jesus, just making sure that women understand you are still loved. God is still waiting with open arms for you to come back, to accept Jesus, to have you experience compassion and love the God kind of way. And September 26th through the 28th, we'll be going to Orlando, where we're going to I'm having the Back at His Feet retreat, and it's all about Luke 10:42. It says Mary has chosen the better thing, and it would not be taken from her. And so we're going back to the feet of Jesus. And again, September 26th through the 28th in Orlando. It's normally held in Atlanta, but God is sending us to Orlando this year. And so I'm excited about the Back at His Feet retreat, because he had me to change the name of everything that I had. You got to break down in order to build up. And I know the things that I built previously, God did not build that house. So it was labored in vain. And so I had to tear down. So, because I don't want anything that I build to be in vain, I want to make sure that God is building the house. So come and join us September 26th through the 28th. We're going back at his feet. We're just laying things down so that we can meet meet with Jesus to get the wisdom, to get the things that we need. And, just like Matthew says, come to me, those who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And we're finding rest at the feet.
Oh boy, we need rest in this world, right? I'm
Yes.
like, yes, I love that so, so much. Well, it has been an absolute joy and pleasure to talk to you, to hear your heart and your story and your testimony. And I know, my goodness, you are going to help so many precious women out there who are just struggling. Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. This has just been so good. I would love to even have you back to just chit chat more because I know we could, right?
I would love that. I would love that
so much. Yes. Oh, well, you were such a joy, and I just want to say thank you again. So,
Thank you.
Gosh, thank you so, so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for gathering with me today. I hope you leave feeling a little more loved, a little closer to Jesus, and overall know that you matter. Life can be hard, but when we gather together, it makes it a little more sweet. I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast and find me on social media. We'll chat soon, sis.